paradoxically, you speak about transparency, but for most people, it's a black box where something that they don't know occur, and that thing that occurs makes very valuable some assets and nothing valuable other. So what's the difference between one asset and the other one in popular terms?
So I think in terms of market effect, indeed, the market is something of an opaque beast that is difficult to know what's going on behind the scenes of any given participants. And this is part of a free capitalist society, that all the market participants are, in principle at least, have some privacy. Now, of course, you can argue, well, there might be some participants that have undue knowledge, and that leads to a detrimental effect for everybody else, all the other market participants. And that's a fair point, and that's, in some sense, up to government to work out where the boundaries lie in this case. But the underlying technology, the one that facilitates the possibility of these low barriers to entry markets, this can also be opaque, right? Why is it that Bitcoin works? Who knows why it works? Well, the thing is, the nice thing with Bitcoin is it's easy for you to educate yourself on why it works. You can read the paper, you can look at the source code. And if you're a computer scientist, you can write your own version of Bitcoin that will check everybody else's usage of it and make sure no one is doing anything untoward. This you can't get with banks. With banks, the alternative, there is no way of verifying. We have to trust the regulators are doing their job. And as we know, oftentimes they are not always fully competent at it.
You're right on that, but at the same time, I don't see anything different than speculation in the determination of the value in what you say. It's pure market, pure speculation.
And this is something that is in some sense intentional. The alternative would be some authority that sets the price. And the entire point of decentralized currency is that there isn't an authority that sets the price. Is that we don't have an authority because fundamentally we understand that trying to somehow place a currency under authoritative control will tend to lead to economic ruin.
What's the role of foundations like yours with Ethereum in this, I would say, governance of the cryptocurrency world? How do they, how are they funded? How do they work? Who chooses his authorities?
So different foundations obviously work in different ways and have different relationships to the technological organizations.
But there's always one, Polkadot in your case, blockchain in
indeed,
Bitcoin?
Oftentimes there isn't always one. So for example, Bitcoin doesn't have any particular legal organization that purports to steward it. Even Ethereum doesn't really. There is the Ethereum Foundation, it's fair to say, and to some extent, to a fairly substantial extent, they do keep an eye on the technology and make sure that it progresses in line with newer thinking. But in reality, an awful lot of Bitcoin, an awful lot of Ethereum, much of the infrastructure and many of the products that sit upon it have nothing to do with the Ethereum Foundation and actually more to do with other companies, large companies, that sit within the Ethereum ecosystem. So it really does depend a lot on the specific circumstances of the ecosystem.
Claro, habla del ecosistema cripto y se refiere a algo que está floreciendo, un fenómeno social en la Argentina y más específicamente en Buenos Aires. Este hombre a quien están escuchando tiene más de 500 millones de dólares, para darles una idea de la fortuna que amasó con las criptomonedas. Le pregunté, obviamente, por el escándalo de Libra. Le pregunté por MILEI. Habla en este fragmento de las dos cosas. Y fíjate, porque te va a impresionar de qué manera lo reivindica al presidente y cómo soslaya el hecho de que en ese escándalo, en el de Libra, hubo miles de damnificados que perdieron decenas de millones de dólares. How does the Libra case affect the credibility of all the crypto industry?
So, the crypto industry, I would say I have a relatively tangential position within it. I consider myself much more a technologist and a Web3 technologist at that. Now, the reality is that Web3 encompasses a number of different utility functions, of which currency is one of them. And it is delivered in a number of different ways, in which cryptography is one. Mm-hmm. And therefore, inevitably, there will be some overlap with the cryptocurrency. But in terms of, let's say, our North Star, I would say it is rather different to the North Star of cryptocurrency advocates. I do not consider myself a cryptocurrency advocate. Now, specifically,
but you found it one of the most used in the world.
Well, as I said, inevitably there is some overlap.
How does that big cryptocurrencies are affected by scandals like this?
Wherever politicians are involved, there will tend to be scandals. I don't think it's got all that much to do with cryptocurrency and more to do with those involved.
Some of your colleagues, like Charles Hoskinson, said that people from MILEI's inner circle tried to charge him for getting close to him. At the same time, your ex-partner Vitalik Buterin supported MILEI days after the scandal launched. What's your take on this case? What have you done if they have asked you?
I don't really know, but I don't really know any of the people involved. I mean, the last time I was in the same room as Charles Hoskinson was, I think, over 10 years ago. The last time that I did much coordinative behavior with Vitalik was probably at least 5 years ago. So I can't really comment on this specific situation. What I would say, though, is this. It seems to me that Argentina has a pretty structural issue, given long-term economic issues. And it seems to me that MILEI has a not unreasonable plan that is quite well researched for trying to ameliorate this structural problem. Now, wherever there is power, there will tend to be corruption. Power corrupts. Good leaders are rarely saints. And if the desire is to have a saint in power, or only have saints around the person in power, then I suspect the country will be on a death spiral. The reality is that countries, especially those in difficult circumstances, needs great people, and great people will tend to have not always saints around them. I think, at the end of the day, it's a democracy, and this is therefore something for the electorate to decide on whether it wants to only have saints around its seats of power or fix the structural issues. But wanting to achieve both at the same time, I would say, would be over-optimistic and ambitious.
Interesting. There is a distance between having people who are not saints around you and stealing hundreds or thousands of investors on a meme coin. Is that the meme coin the problem? Is it normal for you, for a leader, to promote the people buying a meme coin?
I don't think I've ever promoted anyone buying something as silly as a meme coin. They are silly. But honestly, who's the more foolish? The fool or the fool who buys their meme coin?
I don't know. That's why I keep far from that kind of asset.
Fair enough. But if I were foolish enough to buy a meme coin and be rug pulled,
Lo justifican